Welcome to Community Cop. My name is Julian Harper, one of the co-founder members of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. Today I'm here with two of my co-hosts. First of all, Noel Leader.
Peace, and I'd like to once again say what's up to Vernon Wells, who's definitely recovering. We're glad to hear that. Definitely progressing. The family loves you. The Community Cop family loves you. The African Village, 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. I know you watching. Peace.
All right. And Michael Graves, a.k.a. Big Mike.
Namaste, and certainly those that believe in the power of prayer, know the power of prayer, continue to pray for our brothers' full recovery, Vernon Wells, because certainly he's very important to our organization, very important to our community.
Absolutely. And Vernon, you know, I just spoke to you a little while ago, brother. Nothing but love for you, and I'm still waiting for the text. I've been looking for it since we had the conversation, brother. But quick recovery, speedy recovery,
and Vernon,
and we have nothing but love for you, Vernon.
And Vernon, get well. We got to eat at that spot you told me, a few months ago. We got to go there in Queens. You know what I'm talking about, the veggie spot. Got to make it happen.
You talking about the rib shack?
Well, that's where you going. Me and Vernon going to a veggie spot.
I am not going to touch that conversation. All right. Vernon, we love you, brother, and get well soon.
Get well soon, brother.
All right. As you guys know, this is a live program. And in approximately 25 minutes, you guys will have an opportunity to call in, discuss some of the topics that we discussed, and bring up some topics that we did not discuss that you would like to talk about. And hopefully we'll comment on those subjects. As customary, you guys know that we always have our historical piece from our in-house historian, Michael Graves. Michael, the birthday of Jack Johnson.
Yes, certainly Jack Johnson, an icon in sports, an icon in African-American history, and certainly an icon in internationally. He was internationally renowned for his boxing skills, certainly a top-of-the-line dresser. Every time you see any pictures of Jack Johnson, when he isn't training, he's dressed to the nines, jet black like Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, bald head, similar to Khalid Abdul Muhammad. Just what an incredible boxer he was, one of the greatest of all time, and unfortunately, he aroused the anger and ire of white America when he continued to beat every white person they put in front of him. He was one of the only black men in America that was allowed to taunt his opponents while he beat them so easily, and his corner would plead for him to stop taunting them and just knock the person out. But he would intentionally sometimes lift the person back up, destroy the body, just beat the body silly, and then finally knock him out at the behest of his management. But in any way, flamboyant. He was Muhammad Ali before Muhammad Ali. Unfortunately, to his detriment, he had an insatiable desire for white women, which brought him down. Ergo, the Mann Act, on this subdivision of Fugitive Slave Law Act and Robert Mann. So they brought him down. The government, the federal government used that as a bargaining chip to bring him down, and certainly he had to throw a fight in order to get back into this country, which he sorely missed. He missed his mother and family. So I would just say that we should never forget Jack Johnson, because one of the greatest of all time, and the first black heavyweight champion. He opened the door to Joe Louis some 20 years later, and then obviously it got passed down to other people, eventually to Muhammad Ali, who was very similar in certain ways, but certainly not with the white women, but more when it came to the boxing skills. When the rarefied air of boxing skills, Jack Johnson had no equal at that time and even to this very day.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that, Michael. We're going to go into our first topic. Austin Sheffield, a bouncer who punched a black woman in the face. Noel.
All right, many of you have seen this video on the news, on YouTube. It's a very horrific assault. Evidently there was a disagreement in regards to a parking space, and this white bartender, huge guy, just pummeled this female after they had a little, argument. When he approached her, if those of you who see the video, he pulled out a gun and he handed it to her side. Evidently, she seen it. And then she went to call the police and he smacked the phone out of her hand. When he smacked the phone out of her hand, hitting her hand as well, she defended herself, swung a punch at him, and then he just began to pummel her, as if he was beating, I can't even say another man. It's preposterous. But to add injury to insult, of course he was arrested later on after this particular video went viral. He was arrested and he only received $1,500 bail. So not only was his bail very low, but he was of course undercharged. He wasn't charged with a felony, and I know he could have been charged with a couple of felonies. I mean, the female stated that she suffered a concussion, which makes her injury a serious injury because concussions are nothing to be played with. So the assault, should have been a felony assault, at least second-degree assault. And the mere fact that he brandished a weapon, he should have been charged with that as well. So this sister was assaulted twice, first by the individual and then by a judge who, went very light on this individual who was, the assault is so outrageous and it outraged a lot of people. So once again, we see, the criminal justice system extending this white skin privilege to white criminals, as we see oftentimes, by hitting with such low bail the judge, and then the prosecutor undercharging him with nothing but misdemeanors.
Right?
Yeah, this district attorney, John Kresvat, he certainly undercharged this white supremacist Sheffield, pardon me. He characterized it as a misdemeanor assault. And misdemeanor assault is tantamount to slapping somebody. Where obviously, first of all, he menaced her with a weapon, threatened her with a weapon, besides destroying her property, the cell phone, and then just started pummeling her with strong shots to her face. So this was more than a misdemeanor, just to have the gun on her. And all over, he didn't do this in order to save his life. He did this over a dispute over a parking spot, which escalated. So my concern, more so besides, he's just another run-of-the-mill white supremacist coward. That's all he is a white supremacist coward. I have a problem with the legal system for just charging him with a misdemeanor assault, which is, look at these full shots. These are strong right hands where he's pulling all the way back, hitting her. That's not a misdemeanor. I'll leave that to Julian. He's the expert on the various penal codes. But I would just say that that's not a misdemeanor. A misdemeanor is when you just spit on somebody, which is an assault, or if you just slap a person one time in the face. That's misdemeanor assault. But certainly he went above and beyond what that situation called for. Just beat her down. That's an attempt at something more serious than a misdemeanor, I was saying. But certainly my problem again is with the judge who had him post a $2,000 bond and let him go the same day. In other words, right in, right out. He was arrested, but he was let out the very same day with a $2,000 bond, post. So that's totally ridiculous, and that's uncalled for. And that wouldn't happen had a black man pummeled a white woman. There is no way in the world he would be let go the same day and on a $2,000 bond.
Well, based on me seeing that video, I would think that an assault, a felony assault could be charged. And I don't know what the statute, how the law works there, but if you say someone intended SPI, which means intended a serious physical injury and may have caused a serious physical injury, now that would constitute a felony assault. this guy looked like he was trying to knock this woman out like he was a professional boxer.
Exactly.
So I would say his intent was to cause serious physical injury. So, just speaking, listening to Mike's comment, I concur that just based on the intent in itself, and I don't know the degree of her injuries, but you can definitely charge a felony assault.
Right, and she reported that she had a concussion. When she had a press conference with her attorney, so that would alone would raise it up to, because the concussions are very serious, to a felony assault. And as you stated, clearly he was trying to knock her out. I mean, you don't hit a woman like he was hitting her, and he has no defense, saying that he was attempting to defend himself because she was in cover-up mode as he continued to pummel her. And the charge in New York would be menacing, when you pull out a weapon
That's right.
and threaten somebody. But over there in Texas is deadly conduct. So that could be a felony or a misdemeanor. But when you attach the assault to him brandishing a weapon, that should have elevated that deadly conduct charge up to a felony as well. So he was undercharged by the district attorney. He received a very low bail, and the history of bail in this country, African Americans and Latinos always receive excessive bails for less charges than what he received. There was a recent UCLA study that showed that black people and Latino inmates are disproportionately penalized with excessive bail. And I know there's a movement now with this law reform to do something as it relates to bail. But, time and time again, you see these low bills to this horrific assault, and that's preposterous. And there's a whole study that shows that there's income generated by states as it relates to the whole subject of bail. But anyways, needless to say, he was undercharged. The judge let him out on a light bail. And, this is once again showing how white skin privilege is extended even to white criminals in this society.
Absolutely. And there's a real issue with the justice system nationally that continuously fails African people when we talk about both sides, when we talk about prosecution of African people and the non-prosecution of white folks when it comes to assaults or crimes against African people. So, there's a real issue that we have to concern ourselves with. All right. Thanks, Noel. Next topic. Mike, a white supremacist that had beat a black woman in Florida?
Yeah, this was, and this is why, I always advocate not only self-defense, but us protecting each other, have a real sense of community. So if you're in a position to see something, do something. So this white supremacist, his name is Joshua Edwards. He's a member of the Aryan Brotherhood in Escambia, Florida. Now, what he did was he observed a black woman pumping gas at a gas station. He rolled up on her with a gun, kidnapped her, took her in the park, took her car, drove into a park. It's called, just in case you in Florida, it's called Bill Dixon Park. Drove her there at gunpoint, beat her, raped her, forced her at the same time while they're driving in the car. He's forcing ecstasy pills into her mouth. After he rapes her and beats her, he turns around and in the process, her car broke down. After he raped her and beat her viciously, her car broke down. So he stole another car and from another woman, of course, because these are white supremacist cowards, and even those in the Aryan Brotherhood, they're cowards at heart. That's why they bind with other cowards and commit these dastardly acts. So when he stole another car, was able to get away, and he drove over behind a Verizon store where he was arrested by deputies. But this white supremacist monitored her, and that's why we should all be careful, especially when we're alone. He monitored her and snuck up on her. She was totally unaware, pumping gas. And when I thought of that, I thought of Nia Wilson, the beautiful young sister, literally a teenager, who was with her sister. in the Bay Area at a train station, and a white guy walked right up to her while she was helping another sister with her baby carriage and slit her throat. This is going on all over the country. Let's not look at this as an isolated incident. These things are going on all over the country, and I would just hope that we would be more mindful of it, and at the same time, that's him right there. That's the coward who did that. Luckily, he was caught, but that's the gas station that she pumped the gas in, and so we need to stay on top of this case, and he should be an example to all the other white supremacists, especially those in organizations like the Brotherhood, because they would have you believe all of these guys are lone wolves. They're not lone wolves. These guys belong to organizations. They are inspired by the things they see every day. They have a network. They have companions all over the country. As the Aryan Brotherhood, you know, is all over the country. So we should be mindful of this and do our due diligence, because this is far from over them just arresting him.
And this shows a contradiction with the comments made by the president when he was asked, does he think attacks by white supremacists are on an increase? And he said, no, not to his knowledge. Mm-hmm. Yet, you know, we see these horrific acts occurring, you know, over and over again, not only in this country, but around the world. And, you know, the irony of this particular attack is you see the hypocrisy of somebody who's a white supremacist who's supposed to have denigrating comments or feelings towards African Americans and members of the black community, yet he targeted a African American woman to have intercourse with, you know. So these individuals, as Mike just stated, you know, we have to really be due diligence and continue to monitor these incidents as they go on an increase, and as our president continues to put his hands over his eyes, you know, and his ears.
Yeah, and one of the things I think is important is that we have to refuse to be silent on issues and cases like this that are affecting our community, because it appears that every other group that is attacked, feels that they're being attacked, I mean, their voices are being heard across the globe. You have members of Congress, you have other elected officials that are crying out for the needs of other people, and I have no problem with that. But I think that we also have to make sure that the elected officials that we put in office, that we vote for, have the same staunchness, the same volume in their voices when it comes to issues that might affect our community.
Right. But we have to point out, because we have to be consistent and not be contradictory or hypocrites, that, you know, Michael talked about, or we talked about 3 instances. You know, the sister that was cut, her throat was cut.
Nia Wilson.
Nia Wilson. Talked about the sister that was just attacked and raped by the white supremacists. And when we talked about the sister who was pummeled by the white racists, at least now did come out, the Organization of White Women did come out against these assaults on women.
Well, I guess you're speaking from the prophetic dimension. maybe you're thinking that they're going to come out at some point in the future, because up to now the Organization of White Women, now is not NOW, it is NOWW, National Organization of White Women, because that's what they're for. Now, they have some black foolish women in it? Yes. It is foolish of them to join an organization that's a white supremacist organization. They're there to protect themselves. Their only concerns are white women. They don't even just regulate black women to the background. Black women don't even exist to them, because look at all these cases, case after case. Every week something is happening to a black woman. They never address those. If you're not going to address Nia Wilson, you're not going to address any. If you're not going to address all the black women, Charlene Lyles, who was killed by the Seattle Police Department after she called in an attempted robbery of her own house. And they come there, a mother of 4, and she's 5 months pregnant with another one, and they kill her cold-bloodedly for nothing. And you could see the video where they could have backed up. They claim that when they came to the door, she had a knife in her hand, but she backed up. They backed up and pulled out their weapons and shot her. She was concerned about somebody almost entering the house. So I'm just saying, the National Organization of White Women, that's all you are. You should have no black members. If anything, black women should be protesting you for the facade, for the sheer hypocrisy of what your organization really stands for. Now, if you call it National Organization of White Women, I think it'll be fine what you're doing. Your position is fine, but just be honest and upfront. You're only about white women. And if you do that, I won't say no more about you.
And so I stand corrected. That was actually a lob to Mike. Hit out of the ballpark.
He knocked it out the park. All right. Noel.
Yes.
A former police officer in Virginia, a chief in Virginia, was forced to retire because of the position that she took.
Right, yeah. Police Chief Tanya Chapman, who's Portsmouth, Virginia, she was picked to be the first African-American police chief, and she was recently requested or forced to resign because she was trying to make changes. And she made a statement, and this is a police chief with over 35-year experience in law enforcement. She said, "I have never witnessed the degree of bias and the amount of systemic racism as I have in the Portsmouth, Virginia Police Department." This is a police chief. And this is, and I talk about this all the time. This is a commentary on where we are as it relates to law enforcement in this country. Law enforcement agencies throughout the entire country, have this animus against members of the African American community, and they have so much power. They have the power to stop. They have the power to question and frisk. They have the power to summons. They have the power to arrest, and they have the power to take life. And when we see these atrocities, when we see individuals like us who've experienced white supremacy and racism in the New York City Police Department, when we see police chiefs coming out and say, "Listen, I have never witnessed as much white racism in this police department in my 35-year career." When we see individuals like that, when we see videotapes of officers murdering African Americans, assaulting them, alarm bells should go off. We have to say, time out, man. We have to do a study on the state of law enforcement in America. When we find out these studies that cops, they're letting 200 people out of jail because this cop had a history of fudging reports and torturing inmates or prisoners to confess, there has to be an alarm bell. But we just continue to go on as if this not isolated cases. This happening here. Every week we talk about 2 or 3 cases. We can talk about 5 more. We had a 2-hour program. New, fresh cases. This has happened over and over again, yet the whole country is silent about the awesome abuse of authority, the awesome criminality that is going on in police departments throughout this nation. Thugs, criminals, white supremacists, racists, patrol our communities with all this power, and we just, it's unbelievable. But this police chief, big kudos, she was asked to resign because she wanted to change the racial dynamics of her agency, and white unions, the white officers in her department said, "No, we ain't changing," and they forced her to resign.
Yeah, just want to say this sister was the best of the best. She went through every rank possible in the police department. She was recently appointed to that position from another police agency. She's going through everything. She is experienced on every level of law enforcement. She was receiving resistance not only from officers on patrol. She was receiving resistance from every rank under her because to change the structure, to change the texture and tone of a police department, there are various rank structures, and you have to deal with all of them so it will trickle down to the officer on patrol. She received resistance. She was not getting the cooperation from all of her supervisors, and this is what made it so hard on her. So this is why she resigned, and she was forced to resign anyway. But this is what happened over the course of trying to have some integrity. In other words, she could have sat in her office and allowed business as usual to go on. And there's some clear examples all over the country where that's the case. You're dealing with some white supremacists of the highest order, yet you just want to keep your job. You want to have a good folder. You want to have a nice resume. So you want to prove that I was police chief. I was commissioner for X number of years in this police department. I was X number of years in this major city. So She chose another route. She said, I'm not going to just build a resume. I'm going to be true to myself and resign because I can't make the changes. And obviously, I didn't read this part, but obviously the mayor was not on board with her to give her the support, because if you have a mayor with you, now you can start making changes because you can start removing people. But she did not have the cooperation of the high-ups. And when I say mayor, I'm also meaning whatever that city council structure, the whole, if you get the right political connections, then you are allowed to make changes unapologetically. And she did not have the cooperation, and she saw clear, apparent, everyday racism in that department, and she was not able to muster the assistance that it would take because of these breakdown of various department heads, and that's why she left.
And how do we think the person that's going to replace her is going to do as it relates to what she said? I have never witnessed the degree of bias and acts of systemic racism in my entire 35-year career that she witnessed there. Now, what do we expect from her predecessor, the person that's coming to fill her shoes? Are they going to make any changes? Of course not. And that's just a sad commentary of the state of law enforcement in this country.
Well, one of the things she said that, that the subordinates did not want to take orders from a female African American. And, you've worked in the police department as a supervisor, New York City Police Department. I worked as a supervisor, and trust me, that is not an anomaly. I found that there are a lot of white subordinates who find it very difficult, even though working for people like myself and yourself, they had no option, but did not want to take orders from supervisors, black supervisors. And I also found that white superior officers would even sometimes try to circumvent orders by black supervisors to ensure that their white subordinates get things done the way they want them done, or had an opportunity to avoid orders by a black supervisor. So, it's, this isn't anything new. We've been dealing with this since, forever. But as Noel stated, we really have to find a way to combat this white suppression that exists when you talk about, especially in law enforcement, because it affects our lives to a degree that's phenomenal. We're talking about taking the lives of African American people. And I'm talking about literally and figuratively when we talk about putting them in jail, and even the murder of African Americans in this country.
And shame on the Portsmouth, Virginia community if they don't come to this as the defense. If they don't demand, no, we're not going to accept your resignation. We want you in there. We want you to make change. If they don't, shame on them.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, they will be stuck with whatever member they decide to make the police chief. Whatever person they decide to make the police chief. Michael, the Chanel Lewis case.
Yeah, that's currently going on. This is the second week of the Chanel Lewis case, and just in case anyone forgot, that's the case where the young white girl who was jogging in that area, that like Far Rockaway, that area along the Belt Parkway. And first of all, certainly my condolences for her losing her life 3 years ago to her family. Certainly, that's a lot of sorrow, and certainly I would like to see the person who did that prosecuted to the full extent of the law, because that case should not go unsolved. Unfortunately, in this particular case, I believe that they just picked some person out of the blue, off-duty lieutenant just picked this person who he saw that same day later on when he found out that there was a homicide committed in that area. He said, I do remember a strange-looking guy. All stuff circumstantial at best. And so in any event, he's being charged with her murder and rape. The first trial, it was a hung jury. This trial is in the second week, and I've been there several days now. The very same thing that Noel was talking about last week with respect to not being forthcoming with Rosario material. This was done in this case both times. They're not forthcoming once they get information with giving it to the defense. They're waiting. They're claiming that they just received it, and they bring it into court like the day after they give it to, so the defense can't prepare. If you look closely at the testimony, which I know some of y'all saw a confession on YouTube, if you were in court to see more of, not in its entirety because it was edited, but if you see more of the confession, you could see that those detectives coerced that out of him. He went from not wanting to speak. They used, incentives like obviously sleep, sleep deprivation, food deprivation, the lights in his eyes when he was sleepy. He wanted to speak to his family, wanted to make a phone call. Let me just put it diplomatically. He doesn't have total awareness. I would say somewhat diminished cerebral activity. Noel, is that a?
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Somewhat, somewhat it's challenged. Consequently, there's a part of, if you see the video footage, he's asked at 11:30 at night, even though he's tired and sleepy and hungry, he asked the detectives, could he see cartoons? That's, this is a grown man, 20 years old, 21 at the time. He's asking them, could he see cartoons? Which kind of shows you the mental state that he has. He's harmless, and he was much smaller, and you could see that he could not, he doesn't even have the kind of physique to take somebody's life. But in any event, they've charged him with it. Come out to the courtroom, 12501 Queens Boulevard. It's Queens Criminal Court. 12501 Queens Boulevard. There's subway access, so if you can get out there and show some support for the family. They need your support, and certainly I want to see, and I'm sure 100 blacks and all of us want to see the right person prosecuted, but he's not that person. He's being victimized, and the judge seems to be going along with too many things. So.
And one of the problems that we had with this, one of the problems that I have with this case, this is a alleged sex crime. Well, this was a sex crime. All of the reviews of the victim's body show that she was sexually assaulted, sexually abused, but there's no DNA.
Right.
His DNA, in terms of the amount of DNA that you would expect, in a sex crime. Whether it's hair follicles or liquids, et cetera, et cetera. And they claim they have some DNA. I think they said they found on her neck.
Well, but they didn't have any DNA until they had him swabbed him. They swabbed him, and then suddenly
they came up with DNA.
But it's not a conclusive match.
Right.
But they say they have something. Now, if a person had sex and beat her down and all of that stuff, and then you found some faint traces of something that's similar to his DNA on her neck, that's just fishy at best, especially when they were in the same area, and they have DNA that can float from person to person with minimal contact. But for the vicious assault on her body and the way she was beaten, and him supposedly being the one who raped her, nothing,
right.
Absolutely nothing.
And this is reminiscent of the Central Park case. You see so many similarities. They said they had DNA. Of the Central Park case, but a year later, you find that they really didn't. And
when they didn't, what does that mean? That when they have DNA, they go with science, but when they don't have the science to support it, they throw science out.
They throw science out the window. So that's why there's a lot of concern, as you stated. We always give condolence to any victim of a crime, but in our case, any black person will do as being a culprit in this particular case. So it's not acceptable that they would just pick any individual with the lack of science that would normally exist in a case like this.
Right. And it's unfortunate, and this isn't anything new. You find nowadays that there are multiple people who have been arrested and being released based on overzealous prosecution or overzealous policing. People have gone to jail for 30 years, and it's been discovered that they didn't, in fact, commit the crime. And, it's unfortunate that the pressure that's not just the pressure that's being put on law enforcement and the district attorney's office, but just the amount of pressure that these guys allow themselves to be under that would allow them to, and I don't know if it's only the pressure, but would allow them to prosecute or even arrest someone who they don't have evidence or sufficient evidence to prosecute or even arrest.
The
So-
control room didn't put up the number yet.
Okay. All right. So we wait. I'm sure we'll get the number put up for you guys to call in. It's about time for our phone calls. But another incident. We talk about how the foot of white supremacy is on the back of African people, and it doesn't just apply to the adults in our community, the men in our community, the women, the adults, but it applies to our youth as well. A high school student, a ninth grader, who attends Eleanor Roosevelt High School in in New York. She was in school and she was given a female, well, I'll tell you exactly what it was. It was a tampon and it had the word, "Ins don't have any rights." And this was given to a young girl in school by two young white children or youth in her school. And she was really bothered by it, obviously, and taken back. She didn't report it to the authorities in the school, but she told other members of her high school about this, and they reported it. And then the school opened up this major investigation. They said that the youth who were involved in this are going to be punished for what they had done. But this just goes to show you that the minds of white supremacists is just so have no respect for our youth, for our community, and we really have to deal with it, not just when we talk about law enforcement, but even within our schools. I mean, we send our children to school to get an education, and this young girl is the only black, because this is a very prestigious school, she's the only black in the ninth grade in that entire school. She's the only female black in the ninth grade in that entire school. So you can imagine the pressure that she's under, being the only one in that school, surrounded by these other than black children, and being attacked in this manner. I mean, could you imagine, any of our children being subjected to that?
No, sir.
And it's unfortunate. Okay, but we do have our callers, so we'll go to our first call. First caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
Yes, sir. I'm Kareem from Holland.
Peace, brother. How you doing?
God bless you, brother.
All right.
First of all, brother, Judge Cheney says that black people have no rights that white folks will ever respect. That's the first issue. Second of all, the smallest issue is I don't condone his behavior, and I don't condone him the charges being dropped against him. But the fake Mayor Emmanuel Rome had the nerve to try to make it look like that he had the nerve to, just because he was a star, to get away with what he got away with. Well, what about when the black brother got killed and you held the picture and the video from the public until you got reelected? Third, and last of all, is I'd like to know what you brothers think about the Mueller report and the fact that he didn't exonerate Trump, and the fact that with all the evidence that we have seen with the and all these Russian spies and all these different people, how in the hell could y'all come up and say, no, there was no collusion, and that it was no conspiracy? This is just the way the white folks do. And the people that's backing him is a shame, because anybody with common sense could see that this man conspired with Russia, he committed treason, and the Republicans and people in this country is still backing him. And this is the way it always has been, and this is the way it always will be. So people should get in the street, go to Washington, let them know that we're not going to accept it, and he pointed everyone who was over this report. So how could it be fair? Thank you, brother. I hope that y'all will respond to my last question. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Well, I think he answered his last question, but you could also add obstruction of justice. You can also add violation of the emolument clause. There's a litany of things that he's done. Even if you have not investigated or seen any paperwork, just by looking at your TV, you can see there was collusion. You can see that there was collusion in the election. You can see that there was obstruction of justice with the firing of Comey, and then to bring in his friend Barr to now be the AG. So it's all so many levels, so we don't have to cover it here because it's discussed on major white networks. So to respond to your question, it's all out there that he did it. Obviously, this was never meant to lock up Trump or to damage him going into the next election or to hurt his family. There's been 7 convictions already, and that's all is going to come out of that unless New York State does something, which I doubt it's going to do. Trump will not be prosecuted. As long as he's president, nothing's going to happen to him.
And clearly, you know, if anybody looks at the relationship that Trump has with Putin, who's supposed to be, Russia's supposed to be the nemesis of this country, international, you know, he has a very cushy relationship.
Right.
He fails to criticize him. They had to really pull his teeth to enact sanctions against Russia because of some of the activities that they've taken. But there's a relationship there that precedes, you know, the normal diplomatic relationship that presidents have. You know, when he criticizes only his own intelligence division before, you know, the president of Russia. You know, it was
specifically, brother, he tells that he knows more about intelligence than the FBI. He knows more about intelligence than the CIA.
That's what he claims. So there's definitely some irregular occurrences that's going on there, and so that's, you know, as Michael said, I'm not surprised, you know, but it's definitely, you know, for most Americans should be alarmed.
Mm-hmm. All right, next caller. Welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
Scobie from Manhattan.
Okay, go ahead. Quick question or comment.
Fellas, 2 things real quick. The first 182 days of this year, 147 unarmed, non-criminal blacks were killed by police. Mm-hmm. What is your spin on that? Secondly, I saw the movie Crime and Punishment by the NYPD 12, that Sergeant Edwin Raymond. I just wanted to ask you guys, since you guys are NYPD, if you guys did the same thing that happened in that movie as far as the stop and frisk and all that other stuff against communities of color, if black cops and stuff were to do that stuff to white communities, what would happen with those cops and the questioning?
Mm-hmm. Well, the uppers of the police department wouldn't tolerate that. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't tolerate that activity occurring in white neighborhoods. And we were very vocal. We were very visible. We appealed to Congress. I personally delivered letters to every member of the city council saying, let me explain to you how you can clearly show and prove that New York City Police Department is engaged in illegal, unlawful stop, question, and frisk.
The president, department advocate.
The public advocate, Bill de Blasio, when he was the public advocate, I hand delivered a letter to him.
Attorney General.
I went to appeal to the Attorney General. We made all these appeals because New York City Police Department was engaged in criminal activity against the black community in the form of stop, question, and frisk. These were crimes. The Constitution that talks about the Fourth Amendment, you can't search and seizure, all of this stuff. You can't do it. Police department was doing it ad nauseum to the tune of millions. And reports after reports proved that, but it was ignored. Why? Because it was occurring to members of the African American community. And when I stated on the radio that the overwhelming majority of police officers are criminals, I got feedback, even though there was an attorney on there with me who said these are crimes because they're violations of the Constitution, these illegal search and seizures. He acknowledged that, but he couldn't acknowledge that police officers, if you commit crime, you're a criminal. And when you talk about 600,000, 1 million stops a year, you're not talking about a small amount of people. A small amount of police officers don't do 600,000 reported. You can multiply that by 10 of not unreported stops. So, make a long story short, during the era of Giuliani and Bloomberg, our community was under siege by the criminal NYPD, who was conducting unlawful, illegal stop, question, and frisk. I use Michael words because I like that word, ad nauseum. And it was ignored for the most part by most of your black elected officials, by some of your big black clergy who have relationships with Giuliani, relationships with Bloomberg because they had government contracts, Flake, Butts, and St. Bernard. Your biggest clergy, they stood quiet while our people were being pummeled by these illegal searches. And we never know the damage that was caused, how many people were falsely arrested, that were assaulted, and, were traumatized by these unnecessary encounters.
And I'll buttress your point with three quick things. We met with the governor.
That's right.
And spoke about stop, question, and frisk. We met with the New York State Attorney General's office,
that's right,
the top law enforcement agency in the state, about stop, question, and frisk. And the other point is that when there was a few stop, question, and frisk done in the Bray Ridge, Sheepshead Bay area, they found 2 to 4 times more guns.
That's right.
So here you are oppressing the black and Latino community, supposedly looking to get guns off the street. Yet when you go into white areas, you finding guns. So what do? Do you keep going? No, you pull back. And stop going into white neighborhoods, because when you went into white neighborhoods, you found more young guys, 25 and under, with guns on them. You found a lot of that among teenagers. Consequently, you pulled back, because whenever you went into those communities, you found twice more guns, 2 to 4 times more guns than you found in any black community.
Guns
and
and
when
drugs.
you talk about the duplicity, when you ask that question, what would happen if black cops did that in a white neighborhood? I mean, that's a real question, and that's something that really exists. I remember when I was a rookie cop and I was working in Crown Heights, and I was in the neighborhood, and I was in a neighborhood that was predominantly Jewish. I was writing summonses, and they took me off that post, and they never put me there again, because obviously someone complained about the amount of summons that was being issued. So, they definitely do, if they feel that there's a problem, if you're being enforcing laws legally that they allegedly want you to do, and it's having a very strong or mal effect on a community that they look to protect, yes, they are going to protect that community.
And, there's 2 points I want to make. But my last point, we have to be honest. The governor did, when we met with the governor, he did call us back and said that he would do something about stop, question, frisk. Now, of course, he had a litmus test, if you remember when we had that press conference in front. So he said he'll do something about stop, question, and frisk. If we hand over David Patterson, we were going to have a press conference.
Well, we don't have the time for that, Noel, but you know full well that at that time, the New York State Attorney General, the AG was Andrew Cuomo.
That's right.
At that time, and the governor at that time was Patterson.
Right.
And I wish we had the time to talk about something that obviously he wants to get us in trouble again. But that's a long story, but he can explain it. He can clarify the whole thing, time permitting.
Right, but needless as to say, our community was devastated by these illegal criminal stop, question, and frisk by New York City Police Department.
Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
I'm calling from Brooklyn.
Go ahead, caller.
Okay, I'd like to talk about Brooklyn Tech, Stuyvesant, and Bronx Science. Because this year, less than 10% of blacks was admitted. Now, from the 1970s to the mid-1990s, blacks and Latino made up more than 50% of the student body. As an example, in 1984, at Brooklyn Tech, there was 4,531 students. 2,239 were black. 814 was white. So we was more than 3 times that of white. And because in our community, the schools had the gifted program and the SP program, because I definitely remember that when I was in school, the SP program is special project. So after the 1990s, they took it out of our community. And that's why blacks and Latinos are not going to these specialized schools. And given opportunity, we dominated. And they know that.
Right.
What do you guys think about that?
I think you're right.
Just let me say this. There was a special article in the New York Post Sunday, page 26. Just Google Brooklyn Tech startling decline and black and Latino. This was a fascinating story. It's 2 pages.
All right, no, you're right, because I grew up in Brooklyn, and a lot of my friends went to Brooklyn Tech. I didn't go to Brooklyn Tech. I went to another school in Queens, but a lot of my friends did go to Brooklyn Tech, and you're 100% right. Just like the school I was just talking about, Eleanor Roosevelt High School. I mean, can you imagine in the entire 9th grade there's only 1 black female in the entire school, and this is a specialized school, and she's being bombarded and harassed by her white counterparts in that school. So you're 100% right.
And brother, one of the things that they've created these non-related tests that aren't even related for for getting in that particular school. They show people materials, African Americans, Latinos now that they've never was trained in, that they never received any information on or tutelage on. You have to actually take a test to pass this test. All of these hurdles were enacted to stop the African Americans and Latino from getting into the school because they're non-related. And to show that African Americans have no friends, it's right now it's the Asian community, which is up in arms. When you talk about inclusion or diversity in that particular school, they are not friends of the African American community. We should learn from their resistance to allowing our children to take advantage of the opportunity that their children are taking advantage of in that particular school. They are the primary ones that are stopping diversity in that particular school, and I think it's preposterous. And the history that you just went over is very telling. At one time, what happened? All of a sudden, we no longer qualify to go in that school.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
Right. Something happened.
Let's go.
Hello?
Yeah.
One more thing.
You got to be quick.
These prep tests cost thousands of dollars, and a lot of our people can't afford it.
Right. Yeah, just a preparation
right,
for these exams. You're right. You're 100%. But thank you for your call. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Were you calling from? Quick question or comment?
Yes, assalamu alaikum to Brother Harper, Noel, and Brother Mike is on for Sunny.
Okay.
All right, salam, brother.
Okay, now, I don't, tests to get into higher school, you should have to take a test to get into higher school. You should the test should be given to see where I got to start you off at in high school. In other words, if my math is not up to par, then they should start me from there and bring me. It shouldn't be till I get in there. That's discrimination. It's like, Brother Harper, Noel, when y'all started the police force, whatever range y'all raised up to, you didn't go in that range. You started off from the ground and you worked up to that range. That's what I'm talking about. High schools, that test should be like, we're not going to start this child off to bring them up. You know what I'm saying? You're talking about the attack on black women. I remember there was a black sister police officer in Jersey where she was with her white counterpart and they arrested the brother and he had the cuffs on and he attacked the brother and she stopped at him and he cracked her jaw, punching her jaw.
No, that was in Buffalo.
Okay, brother. Now see, if I was in Buffalo, brother Mike.
The sister's name is Carol Horn, a good sister who I met, and we tried to get her a job, and our good, strong Field Marshal extraordinaire, Eric Josie, went over her paperwork. Unfortunately, we got her paperwork too late, but Eric Josie saw flaws in the way she was dismissed because she did come to the aid of a black man who was handcuffed and restrained, and for no apparent reason, the white guy started beating on him, and she stopped him. She did what she's supposed to do, and that white police department turned on her.
All right.
Last but not least, Brother Noel, Brother Harper, and Brother Mike, I hear how y'all approaches certain politicians about the stop and frisk. When Giuliani lost his fight to Deacon, he had a large march in front of the mayor's office where Deacon was at, and it was basically mostly white cops off duty. Did y'all get the same backings from black officers when y'all protested this unjustified the process we're catching the black community? And I hang up and listen. And stay strong, brothers.
Well, first of all, before anybody answers, that was not a march he led a riot. If we want to characterize it correctly, Giuliani broke the law and led a riot where cars were overturned, people jumped on top of cars, bottles with beer and all that was thrown, and it was white police officers.
All right. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop.
How you doing, Community Cop? Noel, Julian, Big Mike.
Go ahead, brother. How you doing?
Okay, I know we ain't got to point number one. Our thing is when something like that, the atrocities happen, our thing is we want to try to give it to God. We got to get rid of that one.
Quickly.
Number two.
Quickly.
Alton Maddox will kill that case. Alton Maddox will kill that case out there in Queens. Number three, tomorrow, Wednesday, Mackey's to the third lecture series, 103 Quincy Street. A train, C train, Franklin Avenue. History is important. Lectures is important. Hope to see the community cop family tomorrow. 7:45. Mackey's to the third, 103 Quincy Street. Thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much.
you, brother. We got one more caller. Next caller, welcome Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
This is Eddie from the Bronx.
Go ahead, brother. Real quick. Go ahead, real quick.
Yeah. I saw that thing on the Independent Investigative Report about the Atlanta child murders, and my conclusion is, when I was talking to another brother there on another cable channel about it, is that definitely it has to be some kind of satanic ritual against those children, because Roy Innes went down there to Georgia to find out what was going on.
Roy
He found
Innes?
out about it.
You
Roy Innes. He
you
said
can't
that.
be
He
serious. Roy Innes?
Yeah. Went down there to investigate to find out what was going on. Yeah.
The only time you ever saw Roy Innes when white people took him out of the closet they got him in, dusted him off, and had them go represent them. That was all to make black people responsible. They knew it was white people that was killing all those black children, but consequently they concluded it was one black man that killed all those children down there.
I don't believe it's one black man that did it. No way.
Absolutely,
No way.
I concur.
No way. Was
I
white
concur.
people behind that. Was white people behind that. And all of a sudden now Hollywood is down there making movies. Come on now.
All right.
Hollywood's making down there after they kill all those children. Satanic
Walter
ritual.
Williams, they put the whole thing on him.
All right.
It wasn't him.
Okay.
And that whole Silhouette thing, come on now. Drop all charges.
Right.
His record sealed. What the hell's going on?
As a
in
teenager,
Chicago?
he was in contact with the intelligence community because he was a brilliant genius as a little child.
All right. Okay, I'm sorry about that, brother. We got to cut you off because we got to wrap it up. I appreciate your call. Closing comments, Noel.
Peace. Len, love you. Little Bo, love you. Kitty Cat, love you. And Vernon, continue to get well and improve your health. See you soon.
Big Mike.
Certainly, prayers for full recovery go out to Vernon. Black man, black woman, protect the black child, accept your own, and be yourself. Watch what time it is when you go to and fro. Watch yourself now, because white people are watching. Whether you love them or not.